The oxygen seemed to vanish from the room as Paige's perfectly manicured nail pointed in my direction. "Lisa, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I'm sure you understand that this sort of vacation requires a certain refinement. Perhaps it would be better if you sat this one out." The Anderson family dining room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes shifted to me, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction. The elaborate vacation plans for Royal Pearl Island, resort the exclusive Maldives getaway page, had spent the last 40 minutes detailing suddenly felt like a knife twisted between my ribs. My husband Oliver's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard I could feel his pulse hammering against my palm. The crystal chandelier above us cast prismatic light across the mahogany table where, moments earlier, Paige had unfurled actual blueprints of the presidential villa she'd reserved, the villa I was now being explicitly uninvited from. "My name is Julia, I'm 32 and a former barista with a secret. This is the story of how I transformed a vacation exclusion into the most expensive lesson my mother-in-law ever learned." "Mother, if Julia's not going, I'm not going either," Oliver said, his voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. The tension in his jaw betrayed the anger he was struggling to contain. Paige's face hardened into the expression I'd come to know intimately over 3 years of marriage to her son. "Don't be ridiculous, Oliver. The entire family will be there. Your cousins are flying in from Europe. You can't miss it because your wife isn't." She paused, searching for the cruelest words she could use in polite company. ... comfortable in luxury settings. "She's right, Oliver," his sister Vanessa chimed in, wineglass dangling between her fingers. "Julia would feel so out of place. Remember how overwhelmed she looked at the yacht club last summer?" What Vanessa didn't mention was how she'd accidentally spilled champagne on my dress that day, then loudly offered to buy me something more appropriate while the other guests pretended not to listen. I touched Oliver's arm gently. "It's okay," I said quietly. "You should go with your family." The triumph that flashed across Paige's face made my stomach turn. She believed she'd won, just as she had every other time she'd tried to separate me from Oliver since the day he brought home that coffee girl he'd fallen for. When I met Oliver at the coffee shop where I worked while pursuing my master's degree in business, he was different from the other wealthy customers. Kind, genuine, and never making me feel less worthy because I was serving coffee. When we fell in love, I thought I'd found my fairy tale ending. I didn't realize his mother would make it her life's mission to break us up. Paige Anderson wasn't just rich. She was old money wealthy, the kind who considered anything less than a private jet to be slumming it. From day one, she made it clear that a coffee girl wasn't welcome in the Anderson family. "Darling," she'd say to Oliver while I was right there, "remember the Rothschild girl? She just got back from Paris, still single, for 3 years. I endured her constant belittling at every family gathering." "Oh, Julia dear, is that dress from a department store? Or how fascinating that you used to serve coffee. It must be so nice to never have to work again." What Paige didn't know, what no one except Oliver knew, was that while I was making coffee and studying, I'd also been investing in cryptocurrencies since its early days. Those investments had grown into a fortune that would make even the Andersons look middle class. But I kept quiet, living simply and reinvesting my profits. Oliver respected my desire to keep my wealth private, understanding it was the only way to know who truly valued me for myself. As the vacation planning dinner wound down, Paige was practically glowing with self-importance. "I've booked the entire Royal Pearl Island resort for 2 weeks," she repeated for perhaps the 5th time. "Private beaches, personal chefs, helicopter tours, only the best for the Andersons." I smiled and nodded, even as she explicitly excluded me from the guest list. But as we drove home that night, I wasn't plotting how to change her mind. I was checking my phone for a very specific email. 6 months earlier, when I'd first heard Paige talking about wanting to book Royal Pearl Island, I'd made a few discreet inquiries. The resort had been struggling financially due to the economic downturn, and its owner was looking for a quiet buyout. Through a series of shell companies, I'd acquired not just the Royal Pearl Resort, but the entire island. I had kept the previous management in place, knowing this day would come. The email I was waiting for arrived just as Oliver turned onto our street. "Acquisition complete. All paperwork finalized. Royal Pearl Island is officially yours." "You're being awfully quiet," Oliver said as we entered our modest home, one whose homepage constantly suggested we upgrade to something more befitting an Anderson. "Just thinking," I replied, unable to suppress a small smile. "I'm so sorry about my mother," he sighed, loosening his tie. "I'll tell her tomorrow that we're both staying home." I took his hands in mine. "Actually, I think you should go. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Without you? No way. Trust me, I said, feeling a plan crystallize in my mind. I think it's time your mother learned that appearances can be deceiving. The next morning, as the Andersons boarded their private jet to the Maldives, I made another call. It was time to set my plan in motion. Paige had no idea that her perfect vacation was about to teach her an unforgettable lesson about judging people by their backgrounds. While their plane was somewhere over the Indian Ocean, I was making arrangements of my own. My laptop displayed the resort's security feeds, a feature the previous owner had installed that was about to become extremely useful. I had set up a secure connection to the resort system that allowed me to monitor everything remotely from our home office. The Anderson family arrived at Royal Pearl Island Resort late that afternoon. I watched through the cameras as Paige led the group across pristine white sand beaches toward the luxury villa. She was already plotting how she'd shared this exclusive experience on social media to make her society friends envious. "Welcome to Royal Pearl Island," the resort manager, James, greeted them with the knowing smile I'd briefed him on. "We've been expecting you." Paige beamed. "Everything looks perfect. I assume the presidential villa is ready for me." "About that," James replied, checking his tablet with practiced concern. "There seems to be a slight change in arrangements. The owner is currently using the presidential villa." Paige's perfectly maintained face crumpled in confusion. "That's impossible. I specifically booked the entire island. No other guests were supposed to be here." "The owner isn't a guest, Mrs. Anderson," James explained patiently. "They own the property and have final say over all accommodations." "Well, who is this owner? I demand to speak with them." Paige's voice rose, causing other family members to gather around. James smiled politely. "Of course, if you'll all follow me to the main pavilion, the owner has left specific instructions for your arrival." The family was led to an elegant open-air pavilion overlooking the ocean. On a large screen, a video began playing. My face appeared, and I watched through the security feeds as Paige's jaw literally dropped. "Hello, Anderson family," my recorded self said pleasantly. "Welcome to my island." A beat. Yes, you heard that correctly. I own Royal Pearl Island Resort, along with several other luxury properties worldwide. The stunned silence was broken by Paige's gasp. Oliver tried to suppress a smile, having been let in on the secret just before boarding the plane. I had called him aside and whispered the truth about my wealth and ownership of the resort. "You see, I continued on screen while you were busy, judging me for making coffee and assuming I couldn't afford luxury experiences. I was building an empire. That coffee girl you left behind? She's worth more than the entire Anderson fortune combined." Paige collapsed into a chair, her designer purse falling to the ground. Vanessa's face had turned an interesting shade of green. "Now, about your accommodations. Paige, you'll be staying in our economy villa. It's quite basic by your standards. But as you said, some people need to learn their place. The rest of the family can choose from our standard rooms." "This is outrageous," Paige shrieked. "I paid for the presidential villa. Your deposit has been refunded," James informed her smoothly. "The owner's decision is final." The video continued. "Oh, and Paige, remember how you said luxury resorts can be overwhelming for someone of my background? Let's test that theory. I've arranged for you to work as a server at the beach bar during your stay. Consider it a learning experience about judging people based on their jobs." Paige's face contorted with rage. "I will not." "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," James replied calmly. "You're the mother-in-law of our owner, who has left strict instructions. If you don't wish to comply, you're welcome to leave. Though the next flight out isn't for 3 days. What followed was chaos. Paige threatened lawsuits, demanded phones, which mysteriously had no signal, and even tried to arrange for a private helicopter, all unavailable by my orders. For the next 2 weeks, the mighty Paige Anderson served drinks to her own family members, wearing the standard staff uniform she'd so often mocked. Every time she delivered a cocktail, the server badge gleamed with her name, Paige Trainee. But this isn't just a story about revenge. On their last day, I arrived at the island, having timed my private flight to coincide with their final day at the resort. Paige was serving at the beach bar, her designer clothes replaced by the simple staff uniform, her carefully maintained appearance wilted in the tropical heat. "Having fun?" I asked. Sitting at the bar, she stared at me, her anger seemingly replaced by exhaustion. "Why did you do all this?" "Because you needed to learn that worth isn't determined by background or bank accounts," I replied. "Every person who served you a drink, cleaned your room, or cooked your meals is a human being deserving of respect." Tears formed in her eyes. I never thought about it that way." "I know," I said softly. "That was the problem. From that day forward, Paige Anderson was a changed woman. The experience of walking in someone else's shoes literally transformed her perspective. She started a foundation providing educational scholarships to service industry workers. And yes, she finally learned to treat people with respect, regardless of their job or background. These days, our family dinners are different. Paige asks the serving staff about their lives and dreams. She remembers their names and stories. Last Christmas, she even insisted on serving dinner herself, saying it helps her stay grounded. The Royal Pearl Resort. It's still mine, but now it runs a unique program where privileged individuals can experience working in service positions. Paige helps run it, sharing her story as a cautionary tale about prejudice and pride. As for Oliver and me, we still enjoy our morning coffee at the same shop where we met. Sometimes Paige joins us, chatting easily with the baristas she once would have ignored. She's learned that true character isn't about how you treat your equals. It's about how you treat those you once considered beneath you. Last week, she surprised me with a handmade photo album filled with pictures from that infamous island vacation. On the final page, she'd written, "Thank you for teaching me that the best view of life comes from getting off your high horse." I keep that album in my office at the resort. A reminder that sometimes the greatest luxury isn't about thread counts or private jets. It's about the ability to see the worth in every person you meet. And Paige, she still works one shift a month at the beach bar. She says it keeps her humble.